Okay, my name is Melanie Jacob, and this is part two, case study follow-up on a non-performing note and workout, and specifically focusing on the timeline and the amount of time it took actually to work out this deal. We, at the end, will have our lessons learned and share some of our vendors that were really essential for us to keep going. The first part one, if you're interested, is going back to the YouTube channel, Phil and Mel Jacob, and you can see part one. And I was so hopeful and so positive and excited because it was one of our, I think this was our third note that we bought. And I think what we did is we were very eager to buy, and we got in maybe over our head. So to that matter, we are now actually more seasoned and more educated on note investing. Okay, so this is a house in Terre Haute, Indiana. It's a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 2-car detached garage in a well-maintained kind of area. As you can see the numbers here, but the last pay date, this was from 2018 when we bought the note. The last pay date was 2011. So we were like, it's clearly non-performing. We're going to take this property back. We didn't know anything about the borrower history. And we already started working outside of our model, which was, part of what was exposed. First thing, you have to trust the curves because you can't see around the bend. We could not see around the bend when we bought this note. And to just think about, we put a bid out in August. It was with a small pool of notes, and we closed in November. That took a lot of time comparatively. We ended up, there's a lot of hills. One of the bigger hills we found in our due diligence, we found there was title issues, but we were like, oh, this shouldn't be hard. We'll get clear the title. But the loan was not satisfied when the borrower sold the home on a quitclaim deed to the current occupant. So on the title, it had the occupant's name, but on the loan, it had the borrower who was completely MIA. So we couldn't find her through legal, loss mitigation. We just couldn't find her. So we had to survive the hills. And this was part of the process. We had title issues, which I just mentioned. We couldn't contact the borrower or the person in the house for that matter. The servicer reached out, the letters got returned. And the title was contested. So when it took about 6 months for all the exploration, they call it in legal, to get all the data, and then for them to submit the claim, and yet the person in the house contested the claim. So then that moved the legal into a whole different department. And so it's more of a contested legal area. So it just was dragging on and on. Finally, we were about to fire this legal team. And the reason why we kept them is because they were on the case from the beginning. And they actually had history. The borrower had tried to do a bankruptcy with them, and they actually had the files from the bankruptcy back in 2012. So we were feeling like, okay, we're feeling like somehow there's some history here with this legal team. We finally got a new lawyer within that same legal group who was really fighting she was working for us. She was not just trying to delay things. And I think they were delaying because they saw the barriers on the paper. They saw the barriers that there was not a complete pay history. They saw the barriers that there wasn't, it was a lost note affidavit, which meant that there's something in the file that said this was a lost note. Many note buyers had bought this note. You could see by how many times it might have changed hands, and they just sold the note. They were like, let's just get out of this deal. And eventually COVID hit. And we had a delay in that, the court dates, but the court told us to settle out of the court because they felt that the tenant, not the borrower, but the tenant actually had equity in the house because they had made some updates like a new roof and furnace and such. So it's a long road. You know, sometimes you like those hills when you're riding your bike, or you like the curves, you know, when you're maybe on a motorcycle, you're lean, you know, you have to lean in and all these things we were trying to keep perspective, but it's a long road. And when you're on a long road, sometimes you feel like it's never going to finish. So it took over 2 years to finish this. And many, many people in the note world, non-performing note world say, oh yeah, just, you know, your workouts will be 18 months, you know, for the non-performers. Well, I think now, given COVID and given the situation and the paper that's out there, really you need to plan on an extended foreclosure timeline, unless you really try to do cash for keys, which we tried to do. We did try to offer the borrower cash for keys a couple different times with a couple different amounts of money. And finally, when the judge, I mean, the court basically said, hey, listen, you got to settle out of court. You need to have a settlement. So we had to have the appraisal done, which it appraised, luckily, because the time was right, it appraised for over the unpaid balance. We ended up settling and giving them cash for the quit claim deed and the keys. So they quit claim deed it to us. And so now we were on the note and we were on the title. So we were able to sell it pretty quickly once we did, you know, within 1 month, we had multiple bids and we were able to close in about a month after that. So it was a pretty easy sale given the environment, right? Given the environment that we're in 2021 with the housing market, there's just a shortage of housing. So it was a nice house. It was a solid house. So it was definitely worth, we sold it, we listed for $94,500 and we sold it for $89,900. And, you know, even though you go, wow, you only invested $37,000 and you sold it for like now almost 90, like that's a big, you know, gain. Well, you know, with these non-performing notes, it's a higher risk. So there is higher gain, but the holding costs. So when you hold a non-performing note with a servicer, it's $95 a month. When you have a non-performing note, you have insurance that you have to force place insurance that is on the house. When you have when you're working with a legal team for 2 years, it's a lot of money. And so these are the kinds of things that, you know, make this we still made money on this deal. Our investor got their money completely returned and then some, and we're getting our books back next month. So we'll have the final numbers, but it's not like a big home run, but it's not a loss. It's not a loss. So what did we learn? Stick to your buying criteria. Why did we buy a home in foreclosure? That was not our buying criteria. Work with seasoned note investors. And I want to just give a shout out to our investor who came onto this deal as an investor. They were very experienced investor. And so they were part of the workout. So when we did the appraisal and we had pictures, my investor actually went down to the house and talked to the person in the house and created help with the motivation for them to have solutions just to protect his investment. So I really appreciate that. I mean, that is, I can't say enough about that. You need to educate yourself on statute of limitation, lost note affidavit, title issues, legal process. Keep legal accountable. I was constantly emailing and reaching out to make sure they were on track. Full pay history is vital. Find local teams and have reserves for longer holding time. That goes without saying. And perseverance develops character. So that I'm telling you, through this note, we really developed some perseverance and some character. So meet our team here. Tracy, Dickie Baldwin, of course, does all our BPOs and he was able to do our a second title search when we sold the note. Madison held the note. Tracy Simmons was our boots on the ground. And then Amanda was the new lawyer on the team from Reisenfeld and Associates, and she really fought for us. So please reach out if you have any questions, jacobassociates.com. We'd love to communicate with you, work with you, answer your questions about mortgage note investing. And until we do, I hope you have a excellent journey as you go through the curves, the hills, and the flatlands in your note journey.